Okay, great. So we have Sheriff Robinson on the line. Commissioner Stanley's joining shortly. Is Makai on the line? We have Sandra, Damon, Angela, and Melanie should be joining in a minute. So we'll just wait another minute or so and then we'll get started. Maybe actually while we're waiting for Melanie, we can do the introductions piece, just so that anyone who wishes can have a chance to, and it's fine if folks want to remain anonymous, you do not have to introduce yourselves, but we'll go by region and just, we usually in the subcommittee meetings just have everybody identify themselves if they wish. And so why don't we start with the board members? Well, let's start with, sorry, I was going to say, Sandra, let's start with Northern California to keep it to the regions.
Sandra Brown, board member, a couple of years now.
And then so we'll go, let's just finish up the board members and then we'll go to the members of the public and other folks on the line.
So yeah.
I can't read it.
I think everybody else is Southern California or Central California.
So good morning, everybody. I'm Angela Sierra. I'm with the California Attorney General's office. I'm the Attorney General's representative on the board. And I've been, began on the board when it was first initiated. I was out for a little while because I had recently retired. And so I was able to come back as the Attorney General's representative starting in March. So really happy to be back and join the board.
Thanks, Angela. Damon, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sorry about that. Damon Kurtz with PORAC.
And Sheriff Robinson.
Yeah, thank you. Dave Robinson, Kings County Sheriff, representing the California State Sheriff's Association. Appreciate it. Good to hear from everybody.
And let me just check if there's any other board members who've joined.
Hello, I don't know if the audio is coming through. Can someone tell me? Nancy, can you hear me?
Yes, that audio.
Oh, great. Sorry. I'm Lily Kajavi. I'm on a different subcommittee, but I'm a new board member, and I'll just be listening in today by phone. Thank you. Looking forward to hearing from you.
Good morning. Good morning, Lily. Nice to have you join.
Morning. Okay, great. Let's go back to, and again, if everyone could please mute themselves when they're not speaking, we would appreciate it just because of the background noise. I also noticed someone had mentioned in the comments they can't hear anyone, so you may need to call in if your computer audio is not working. Great. Hi, Melanie. Melanie Ochoa just joined. Sorry, Melanie, you're catching right as you joined, but we were just doing introductions.
So I'm Melanie Ochoa. I'm a staff attorney at ACLU Southern California, and I'm one of the newest members of the RIPA board and the subcommittee, and I'm very happy to be here.
Melanie, I do recognize you.
Great. So let's go back to Northern California. If there are other folks on the line who would like to introduce themselves. So anyone from Northern California, if you would like to introduce yourselves, please unmute yourself and just identify yourself now.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Newport Hewitt. I work for the Department of Justice in the Client Services section. I'm a field representative, and what I do is basically outreach and onboarding for stop data support.
Hello, this is Anna Rick with the Civil Rights Enforcement section at the DOJ.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Roseanne Ritchell with the California Commission on Peace Officer Standards and Training, Bureau Chief for the Learning Technology Resources Bureau.
Roseanne, others in Northern California?
Good morning, everyone.
My name's Aisha Martin Walton, and I'm with the Civil Rights Enforcement Section of DOJ, and happy to be here this morning.
Good morning.
Hi, this
I'm
is
Nancy
Ken.
Beninati. Oop. Go, Ken.
Hi, sorry, Nancy. Ken Keating, manager with DOJ CSP.
Hey, Ken. Hi, this is Nancy Beninati with the Civil Rights Enforcement Section.
Hi, this is Tiffany Jantz with the Department of Justice Research Center.
Tiffany.
Hi, this is Catherine Baker. Sorry. Hi, this is Kendall Micklefleet with the Civil Rights Enforcement Section. Happy to be here today. Hi, this is Catherine Bacon Davis. I'm with Post. Good morning.
Morning.
Morning,
Any others in
Catherine.
Northern California? Any others in Northern California?
Good morning. This is Jennifer Van, and I'm also with Post.
Hi, Jennifer. Hey.
Hi, you've got Mike Barnes with Post as well.
Great. Hi, Mike. Any other Northern California? Charles Evans with Post. Thanks, Charles.
My guess is East Santa
Any others in Northern California? Okay, let's go to the Central California. Any folks in Central California wish to introduce yourselves? I don't have a lot of central representation today.
Deanna Frost, Bakersfield Police Department.
Okay, great. Hi.
Allison, who was the last person?
Deanna Frost from Bakersfield Police Department.
Deanna Frost, Bakersfield Police.
Thank you. Hometown for me.
Anyone else?
I hope you're
Central?
somewhere cooler now.
Oh, Bakersfield. Hot, yes. Okay, let's go to Southern California. Anyone in Southern California who wishes to identify themselves?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Michelle Wittig with the Santa Monica Coalition for Police Reform.
Good morning. This is Julie Alley with the Santa Monica Coalition for Police Reform.
Good morning, everybody. This is Rachel Salamanca. I am the director of the Tools for Tolerance for Law Enforcement Department at the Museum of Tolerance in Los Angeles. Happy to be here.
Good to have you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dominique Alcaraz, and I am a Deputy Attorney General in the Civil Rights Enforcement Section.
Anyone else in Southern California? Hey. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. It's great to have everybody here. And thank you all again for bearing with us as we, learn how to do this virtually. But I'm glad we could all come together and find a way to do it. So welcome to the Post-Training and Recruitment Subcommittee meeting. Melanie introduced herself briefly, but we wanted to give our official welcome to Melanie Ochoa, who just joined the board. Melanie's first meeting was supposed to be in March, but since that didn't happen, Melanie's first meetings are actually these subcommittee meetings. So Melanie, we're thrilled to have you. If you want to just give a brief introduction about yourself.
Sure. I've been at ACLU now for almost 4 years, and when I started there, the AB 953 had already passed, but it was in the regulation process, and so I've been kind of participating and watching and observing and trying to participate in public comments as much as possible throughout this entire process. So I'm glad now to be on the other side and try to help facilitate bringing some of those comments from the public and work them into future reports and other things as well. And just a little bit of my background, before coming to the ACLU, I worked at a law firm and for a judge as a clerk, but I also got my PhD in sociology and social policy. So I have a bit of a background on research background, and so I so I said I can help use that to inform some of my insight and comments on the training. I'm happy to do that.
Thanks, Melanie. We're very excited to have you on the board. So the first order of business, and just so folks know, the next item after this is the election of co-chairs, because right now we don't have any co-chairs, which is why I'm running the meeting for now, but we are electing co-chairs this meeting, so I will not be talking the whole time. But first we wanted to, the first order of the agenda was to approve the June 12th subcommittee meeting minutes, because at our last meeting for post, we didn't have a quorum, so we couldn't approve those minutes. So is there a motion to approve the June 12th minutes?
Allison, I apologize. I was having some technical difficulties, so I didn't hear like the last thing you were saying.
Oh,
so yeah, maybe there's like this ominous silence. You may have asked me to do something, and I was having some problems.
No, just asking for a motion to approve the June 12th meeting minutes. So we wanted to get the June 12th meeting minutes approved.
Robinson, so I'll make the motion.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Great.
I'll second that.
Thanks, Angela. And all in favor? I know some of you were not at that meeting, but just want to see if we can get a quorum to approve the minutes. So I guess we'll do a roll call vote since we can't see everybody. So we got Sandra and Damon saying yes. Anyone
Sheriff
else?
Robinson.
Dave?
Yes.
Okay. And I think that's, I know Melanie and Angela were not present.
That's correct.
I guess how many members of the board, of the subcommittee were at the time that the meeting was held? That's 3 should be sufficient to approve the minutes, I think.
I think so as well, but
okay.
Aisha, maybe
looks like
you can
6.
just 6 were at the meeting?
Yeah.
Or 6 were on the board at that time. So
it shows 6 at the meeting and looks like 1 absent.
Yeah. Okay, so we may need to wait till Commissioner Stanley is able to join the call.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll table the approval of the minutes until Commissioner Stanley can join the call, because with the abstentions, it looks like we'll need 1 more yes vote to approve the meeting minutes. So we'll go on to the next item and we'll come back to that when Commissioner Stanley can join. Okay, so the next item for the agenda is election of subcommittee co-chairs. Because of different changes on the board, we right now have no co-chairs for this subcommittee. So I wanted to, so right now we need to elect the co-chairs. And so is there a motion for a nomination? Is there a nomination for one of the co-chairs? Sandra.
This is Sandra Brown. I would love to and am proud to elect Melanie Ochoa, who I didn't know by name, but when I saw your face, we had a nice conversation in Sacramento. So she would be a great member to join the board.
And Angela.
Okay. And I would be very honored to nominate Sandra Brown as a co-chair of this committee. Sandra and I have worked together on the calls for service subcommittee and in other matters. And Sandra, I think you're going to bring a wealth of knowledge and experience to this committee. Very
well,
to nominate you.
Thank you. I told Allison and I told Anna Rick, aren't I already on? So thank you for the nomination. I appreciate that.
Great. So we'll move to, if there are any other
have
nominations?
A second? Yeah, any other and we need to then second as well.
Yes. Are there any other nominations first? Okay, so do we have a second first on the nomination for Melanie Ochoa to be one of the new co-chairs for the subcommittee?
Damon Kurtz, I'll second.
Thank you.
And I'll second the Sandra Brown if you want a second on that one as well at the same time.
Yes, please. Thank you. Wonderful.
And for the audio, that was Sheriff Robinson.
Yes.
For the
Thank
minutes.
you. So Sheriff Robinson, the second for Sandra, and Damon, the second. Okay, so do we need to take, I guess we could take a full vote and just see if there's any, for a vote to have Sandra be one of the co-chairs. We could do a roll call vote. Sheriff Robinson, you already seconded, so I'm assuming you're a yes.
Yes, yes on both.
Okay, great. Is Commissioner Stanley on the line yet? Don't think so. No. Okay. Sandra, what is your vote on the two? You're a yes because you nominated.
I self-nominate myself since I thought I was already there. And obviously I approve of Melanie. So you got 2 votes. I don't know if I can vote for myself.
Damon.
You can.
Yes on both.
Okay. Angela.
Yes on both.
And Melanie.
Yes on both. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. So we have 2 new co-chairs for the subcommittee, Sandra Brown and Melanie Ochoa. We are very excited to have you as co-chairs for this committee.
Yay. Thank you for serving.
Yes, we appreciate all of you and your service.
Thank you.
So before the next agenda item, which is the update of the AB 953 training, which Kimberly is going to speak to, we just wanted to give you all a very quick update about reimbursement since funding has become an issue that has been raised by the full RIPA board and the various subcommittees. And so we just wanted to give you an update on that. And I will let Anna give that quick update.
Great. Yeah, so we've received a number of questions about reimbursement from LEAs, and Commission on State Mandates received a test claim for RIPA reimbursement on May 22nd, the Commission partially approved that test claim. Proposed modifications and comments on the draft expedited parameters and guidelines may be filed with the Commission by June 12th, and documents related to the test claim and comment process are available on the Commission's website. I will add that website to the chat, and I'm going to read it out for people that are on the phone. That's csm.ca.gov/matters/18-TC-02.php. And that's all I had to share.
Thanks, Anna. We just wanted to give you all of that information and get it out to the public as well in case any of you wanted to make comments while the period is still open. Great. Yes.
I was just wondering if any of the members of the board in law enforcement had any additional information about the test case that we didn't have. If they, or if not, that's fine. But
Nancy, Dave
Okay.
Robinson, I actually don't have any information, but I have a phone call. I'm sorry, an email into the San Diego police captain who was the one who spearheaded that effort, and so I'll report back probably on the next subcommittee just some feedback that he gives.
that'd be great. I think that's Jeff Jordan, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, great. I just wanted to check if Commissioner Stanley had joined. Thought I saw his name. Okay, we'll check back in. So the next item on the agenda, we wanted to give all of you an update. The Civil Rights Enforcement section at DOJ has been working with the Client Services Program to develop a training on AB 953 on RIPA. And the training has been approved for POST, has been certified by POST for POST credit. So law enforcement officers can take the training and get POST credit for it. And Kimberly is going to talk a little bit about the training and give you all some more details. Thanks, Kimberly.
No problem. Hello, everybody. So in the 2020 RIPA report, this course was actually mentioned. It's going to be called the Overview of the Racial and Identity Profiling Act, and it's going to be administered by DOJ's, Client Services and the Civil Rights Enforcement section. Basically, the purpose of this training is to provide essential knowledge, history, mandates, statutory and regulatory reporting requirements, as well as explain the use of the data, including supervisory review, oversight, and ensuring that there's uniform reporting. The course will be 4 hours, and as Allison said, it will provide CPT credit to people who complete the course. It's anticipated to be administered 1 day a month in an AM and a PM session, so there'll be 2 courses in 1 day. The targeted audience for this is law enforcement personnel, including your head of agencies, supervisors, managers, trainers, IT and administrative staff. However, anyone in law enforcement personnel will have the ability to take the course. This course was previously meant to be an in-person course and implemented in mid-2020. However, due to COVID-19, we had to push it back till the fall, and hopefully it'll coincide with the RIPA board meetings. So far to date, we have been approved for the in-person version of this. However, we are in the process of developing a webinar version due to COVID because we probably won't be able to do the in-person. And right now what we're doing is working through logistical details and possible limitations that we are experiencing in providing a conference style training. We want to make sure that it's educational and fun and that we also meet post-training course regulations for webinars. And we're structuring the course to provide education regarding AB 953 that meets the need of law enforcement personnel. Some of the key topics that we're going to be covering is the objectives for participants to gain a better understanding of RIPA regulations and how they apply to their agencies. Also to understand the roles of the stakeholders such as the board, law enforcement agencies, DOJ, and POST. And it's also to prepare participants to assist their agencies in implementation of the mandated stop data reporting. And we also want to incorporate real-world stop scenarios in a form of a demonstration. And it'll be provided on DOJ's hosted web app so that the participants can see the stop data collection system and understand scenarios that officers will encounter when collecting the applicable reporting requirements. We'll also go through some of the background legislature, covering a bit about Government Code 12525.5. We're also going to be giving an update during this about the waves. So wave 1 and 2 are already collecting. We're also going to talk about, wave 3 that are set to join collecting January 1st of 2021, and also wave 4 coming up. We're going to discuss a little bit about the board members, who they are, roles and responsibilities, and then additional roles and key activities of the Department of Justice and POST, and also law enforcement agencies and their officer activities. We'll plan to take like a field trip out to the AG's website to look at where the reports are, 2018, 2019, 2020, and what's included in those reports. And then there'll be a brief section where we will actually go over the stop data collection system and the implementation considerations and decisions. Some other topics would be data analysis and release of data, so PRA and open justice and what they're about. And then there's going to be a section that talks about lesson learned. So as you know, we've gotten information, from different agencies, Waves 1 and 2, who share, the do's and don'ts, or, what the challenges were in collecting. So we'll talk about tips from agencies and also partnering with academics. So if any agencies decide to, go ahead and do analysis on their own data. Also talk about accountability. And then there's some additional material. So we plan to make it fun. It'll be instructor-led, and the presentation will include polls, activities, videos, interactive screen displays, and then basically a demo of scenarios. There will be a knowledge check that we will be able to evaluate the participant understanding and that the training took place, and so that they will be able to receive their CPT at the end of the course. And we will also ask for a survey, and that we get valuable feedback to improve the course in later dates. And then live questions and answers, that anything can come from that. So we also ask, for agencies and participants to give back, and that way we can improve the course. And that's pretty much it. Hopefully we'll be rolling out in the fall.
Thanks, Kimberly. Do any board members have any questions about the AB 953 training? Sandra.
Okay, so Kimberly, I wrote down that you said we're looking at November 2020. Is that the online, or are we talking about, I also wrote down in-person training. It's online, right, in 2020, for November?
Can I just ask,
actually not
for anyone
November,
who is, sorry, Kimberly, for anyone who is not on the line, if you could, for anyone who is not speaking, if you could please mute yourself. We're getting a lot of background noise. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Kim. I think I lost Kim.
2020, so the fall.
So we missed you. We missed you there for a minute. You froze for a moment. So can you start all over again?
Yeah, we're anticipating that it'll actually start in the fall, which is September of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been approved for the in-person course, but because of COVID, we've had to restructure things for a webinar, and there's different requirements that are proposed that we have to work out some logistics for to provide a webinar version of it.
Okay,
So
that's
that
what I
one is
wanted to
not
clarify.
approved yet.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. I know that at least I, and I assume all the rest of the subcommittee members, were shown an online module, which is like kind of more early in production, and the video version, which I guess was technically also online, but it was more complete production. But is this a different type of training, and kind of what is the content of that, and what was the involvement of the RIPA board members in kind of helping with that portion?
So with the AB 953 training that Kimberly's talking about, so just the other training that some of you have reviewed from Post, Post is actually going to speak to in the next agenda item. So they're going to discuss all of those different trainings. But I think for the AB 953 training that Kimberly was talking about, that's coming out of DOJ, but that is being Post certified. We actually wanted to ask board members if any of you, we wanted to see about doing, sort of a pilot run of that for board members who might be interested to get feedback. So that one's coming from DOJ, but is certified and approved by Post. Post will actually talk in the next agenda item at length about what they're working on. But we can get a head count now for those of you who would be interested in, we have to work out some logistics still with the webinar version. So we are making adjustments to the training now. But if board members would be interested in reviewing it, we would love to get your feedback. And that would probably be in the next month or two as we work through the logistics of doing it via webinar rather than in person.
I have a question. It's Damon. If we were able to, one, I would like to view the the training, but would it be shareable? So like my executive committee, there's 8 guys that are across the state. Would allow them to also partake in this so that they can give me feedback that I can bring back to this board.
Kimberly, do you want to speak to that, or I can? I think for now, until the training, we'll have to discuss that and see if there's a way to do that, to see if that's feasible. I'm not sure if it is, because I think in the immediate future, we may need to limit it to the board members themselves.
No, I understand that. It was just a kind of a hypothetical from the perspective of, I like to think I know a lot, but there's having differences of opinions and people pointing out different things just usually makes us a little bit better. Obviously I don't want to send it out to everybody. That's why I mentioned my executive committee, which is pretty limited, or even I can limit it even smaller than that. It was just an opportunity to have more eyes looking at it.
And we can discuss and see if that's feasible and let you know that. But for right now, since we're still figuring out the logistics of even being able to show it to the board members themselves, we'll look into that and get back to you on that. But
yeah, Allison, this is Nancy. I mean, Damon, we want to kind of do a test run with folks. So I think that's definitely a possibility. We kind of like, for our practice run, we were thinking of running through it with the board members, but if you wanted to have a couple folks that you think could provide feedback, I mean, we want to make it a good product. Does it, just because someone watches it and gives feedback, we may not be able to incorporate everybody's suggestions, but I think it would be great to have as much input as we can. And Kimberly can tell you more, but we have certain time frames within post. So that's my only concern is being able to meet those time frames so that we can get it ready for launch.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, the other reason being is so myself, I'm on a release position, although I'm still in law enforcement. I'm not basically a practicing police officer. I'm more of a politician these days, and I'd like to give it to some of the guys on my board who are still working the streets, are still doing the job, and so they can look at the practicality of what's going on, if they think it's a good training or not, if there's issues or where they think it could be better.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful, and we can certainly connect with you and the board members in doing that, because we're going through some of the scenarios. So if a lot of the scenarios that we've come up with are based on real questions from law enforcement, and so we have that sort of baseline, but I think it'd be really good to get that kind of feedback. Because if officers aren't engaged, or we lose them somewhere, I think we'd like to know where that is, and also, if there's other areas that we haven't covered that they think might be important.
Okay, sounds good to me.
Yeah, and I think we, in designing the training are, as Nancy said, basing a lot of the, it's really meant to be an interactive training, and, going through, would this be, is this a reportable stop? Is this, how would you write this narrative? And so I think the goal really is to have the law enforcement officers who attend the training come out of it with, a good understanding of what the whole process is with RIPA and the data collection, and how it really plays out in the real life scenarios. And that's one of the goals too, of actually presenting the scenarios that we are getting as questions from law enforcement in terms of how they report on a particular type of stop. So we definitely appreciate as much input as possible. So thank you, Damon. We noted your interest. Are there other board members who would be interested in viewing, in some sort of pilot demonstration once we figure out the logistics of that for the training? So I have Sandra, I have Melanie.
Allison, can I say something?
Yes, please.
Just to be clear, these are two separate training videos that we're talking about. I think that's what Melanie was questioning, because when we were in Sacramento, and Catherine's going to talk about the other training, this one really is about the data collection, how to use it, when to report, what to say for the AB 953 and all the different ways, correct? Basically.
It's not just, yes, but it's not just about the collection. It's also about how stops are being reported. So
Yes.
it's really kind of walking through what it looks like on a daily basis. So if I'm stopping someone, here's the scenario. How should I be reporting this
Yes.
type of scenario?
So it's like a facilitating how this is going to work. The other one that Melanie and I looked at is what Catherine's going to talk about. So they're two separate training videos.
Yes, and there's actually multiple ones that Catherine and other folks and Roseanne and Mike are going to talk about from Post, because they have a lot going on, as does everyone. So they're going to speak to several different trainings and other things. This is a separate sort of more DOJ-led training that was designed in concert with the Civil Rights Enforcement Section and Client Services Program, really based on a lot of the questions that we all get from law enforcement about, how does this get reported or what happens here? And giving background too, I think the hope with this AB 953 training is it's a good overview training also for law enforcement agencies that have not yet come on board with the data collection. So it will be a good one to get everyone up to speed on AB 953.
And Sandra, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to give Kimberly a chance to jump in, but Nancy, go ahead first.
So Sandra, I think you raise a really good point. I think a lot of people don't understand the distinction between the DOJ and Post. Some people think Post is part of the Department of Justice, but it is actually a separate entity, which Catherine and everyone in Post can really explain. But the training that Kimberly and Civil Rights are talking about is wholly within the Department of Justice, again, with Civil Rights and CJIS Client Services. And it's really focused, as Allison was saying, on trying to ensure sort of consistency in how the data is going to be recorded. We're also working with our research center on this project as well. So we have input from them. They are the ones that analyze all this data for the board. And so that's that main goal. And it's Post certified, which means that it's a DOJ produced training so that officers can get Post credit. So I think, I don't know if the public really I know you do, but I just want to clarify that for the public, because a lot of people get confused between what we're talking about.
And that's why I brought it up, because it can be confusing. We got a lot of videos going out, a lot of training going out. So I just wanted to clarify that. And I want to thank Kimberly for that, because it was very clear. I just wanted to make sure.
The only thing that I would add to that is on an outreach perspective. Wave 1 was 8 agencies, 2 was 7, and then 3 will be 10 or so. But when we get to Wave 4, there's going to be 400 agencies. And what we were doing was going out doing outreach, and providing information about legislation in the background of it to each agency. But when we get those 400 coming on in Wave 4, we're not going to be able to go out to each of the agencies, so they can use this as a resource as well.
Kimberly.
Can I just ask, are agencies also required to do their own training on compliance with the RIPA data collection, or would this potentially be the only training that the agencies would get?
The agencies are all doing their own onboarding and training on how to use the data collection system. So the DOJ Client Services Program is supporting all of them in that, but the agencies are all working with their staff to onboard everyone on how to use whatever application they choose to use, and how to onboard everyone to start. They start the meetings, the kickoff meetings that Kimberly just mentioned. They already conducted all of those for wave 3 for next year. So then that gives everybody 6 to 9 months to work with their staff to get everybody ready so that January 1st, when they're required to start collecting the data, they're ready to go. So they do a lot of testing and they do training and they onboard everyone to the systems and they practice with the systems so that on January 1st, everybody is ready to start collecting right away.
I think, Melanie, to your point, I don't think Post itself has developed a training similar to this one. And the one that we're doing is really an expansion of a PowerPoint and sort of kickoff presentation that we did for the wave 1 and 2 agencies early on. And we're expanding upon it and trying to get credit so that people can get credit for it.
Great. Thanks everyone for your engagement with these issues. I'm going to turn it over to Aisha, who's going to set the stage for the next agenda item from Post. Aisha, you're muted.
Aisha, I think you're muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. As we know, AB 953 amended the California Penal Code to require the Commission on Peace Officer Standards and Training, or POST, to develop additional guidelines and training courses for peace officers on racial and identity profiling and cultural diversity in consult with the RIPA board. So the purpose of this expanded training is twofold. One, to stress understanding and respect for racial identity and cultural differences, and two, for the development of effective non-combative methods of carrying out law enforcement duties in a diverse environment. So to do that, to achieve this, the legislature then specified that there be, one, a required basic level course on racial identity and culture for officers, and then once they take that course, every 5 years after that, they're required to take a refresher course, or more frequently if it's deemed necessary. So since the establishment of the Racial and Identity Profiling Act in 2015 and the establishment of the board, it's my understanding that POST has developed 2 courses at the basic training level and 1 refresher video course that they just completed this month, and an optional refresher course that's self-paced that's currently being developed. And then thirdly, POST has a contract with the Museum of Tolerance in Los Angeles, and that provides a third option to meet the AB 953 mandate. So POST has engaged with the board in the development of these training courses on various levels. Some members have reviewed drafts of information. Some have attended workshops. We've had a member who was served as an expert. Sandra Brown has been involved. So we've invited the POST Bureau Chief, Roseanne Rachel, and her team to come today to provide background, updates, and more importantly, suggestions about ways that the board can get even more involved in the development of these products earlier and in a more structured and effective way. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Roseanne, who's going to give us more insight. Thank you.
Thank you, Aisha. Good morning, everybody. My name is Roseanne Ritchell. I am a bureau chief at the Commission on Peace Officer Standards and Training, and my area is the Learning Technology Resources Bureau. And I'll explain to you a little bit about what we do in the Learning Technology Resources Bureau, called LTR. We are responsible for producing videos that are to meet legislative mandates and courses for the field. We also develop self-paced courses, and then we also oversee the use of force and law enforcement driving simulators in our bureau. So we touch a lot of the different training aspects in that regard. The last couple of weeks, we have been working with DOJ and having discussions with DOJ about how to collaborate and move forward with training to get RIPA more involved on the front end of our training, especially with regards to the video program. I came over to this bureau back in October, so a lot of the videos that were produced prior to my taking over this position were already long down the road. And so the involvement was, there was some involvement, but not as much as we would like to see moving forward. Our next contract for video production will come into play in July, the next fiscal year. And at that point, as we start to produce videos, again, I was working with Allison and her team to identify subject matter experts on the front end of the training that has to do with things related to your responsibilities, and bring you in as subject matter experts on the front end from the beginning of the course development through the end piece of it. So Post is working on a whole bunch of trainings. Some of them touch LTR, my bureau. Some of them touch the Training Program Services Bureau, the Training Development and Compliance, the basic training course. We touch a lot of, there's 8 different bureaus in Post. And so there are courses related to AB 392 and information related to the training aspect of SB 230 that has come out. They touch a multitude of bureaus within Post. But today what I'm going to talk about, and what Allison and I had discussed along with Aisha, is kind of giving you an overview of our bureau and how we develop the video production part of it, and how we also develop the self-paced courses. So I would like to, at this time, turn it over to my consultant, Mike Barnes, who oversees the video production unit. And then after that, I'll have our instructional designer, Catherine Bacon, one of our instructional designers. She'll discuss the self-paced course, the development of that, and how we move forward with regards to that. So does anybody have any questions of me based on what I just said right now, or shall we move forward? No questions? Or?
I had one question. You mentioned.
Sorry, all of a sudden my gardener just came and now the blower's going, so I apologize.
That's okay. That's okay. Just kind of to clarify, you mentioned, and thank you for the information already as an overview, that the new fiscal year was going to start to allow more creation of videos in June, I believe. I guess, what does that mean? Does that mean there's going to be a new set of videos, that the existing videos that you're finalizing now are going to be potentially replaced? That kind of, what is the interaction between kind of the new videos coming in and the existing videos that you have already created?
Sure, yeah.
Roseanne, if you'd like, I'll cover that in my piece if you'd like.
Yeah, okay, Mike, why don't you cover it, because with the background noise that I have on my end, that would just interrupt things. So I'm going to allow Mike to cover that for you. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay, I'll go ahead and get started. Should take me about 5 minutes, but what I'd like to do is briefly cover 4 different areas of our training video programs. And the first of that is what Roseanne just mentioned, is the differences between training videos and the self-paced programs. Secondly, the types of videos that we can create in the video training unit that I'm a part of. The contract influences, as the board member just mentioned, and how topics are selected, how contracts influence those topic selections and the timing of them. And then also the development process that we use to develop our video training programs. So regarding the first item of training video programs and self-paced programs, you're probably pretty well aware of the work that Catherine and her team, and Catherine's following up after me, regarding the self-paced program, and I'll let her describe those a little more. Where I work and what I'll be focusing on here is the unit that deals with training videos, and that's different than video training. Training videos being videos that are constructed for use within a classroom or by individuals that are eventually or at some time supervised and reviewing the material related to the topic at hand. It can also be used by groups in group training or more traditional settings as well. The video types that we create are 3 major areas. One is what we call a Did You Know? It's kind of like a public service announcement. They're usually about 2 to 4 minutes in length and focus on a single topic. The did you knows go right to the point and try and be impactful with just a good video approach or good content. Some examples of a series we've done in the past were Safe Driving, where we showed several snippets from various pieces of driving that involves officers and the consequences perhaps of speeding, unsafe driving, and public perspective on those types of things. But there was a series of did you knows for those. The one that most people think of as far as training videos would be the training video itself. These are full-length, up to 2-hour training videos that do enable the participants to gain CPT, continuing professional training credits from POST. A facilitator or instructor is required to get the CPT, and if it is taken in an individual mode, then it is reviewed with a supervisor or a training manager in order for that individual to get CPT. Contained within the course are training guides, which include an assessment that must be reviewed, as well as highlighting the individual components, learning points, and various activities and suggested questions and answers that would be useful to new trainers or those who would like additional assistance in presenting the course. Each of the training videos contain normally between 4 and 5 separate scenarios, with each one broken down to the separate learning points, separate activities, and separate questions and suggested answer or possible answers that a facilitator might encounter. And then last, the final type that we produce is a special program, we call it, and it's either a long or a short format. And the special programs are developed for very specific audiences to enable them to do their job better. An example of that would be a specific subject that is lacking good videos. Report writing is one that comes to mind, where the instructors would like to provide good video-based resources by which the students can all create reports with the same facts. So having good resources like that become either a long or a short special. An additional one we're working on right now, for example, is the Academy Director and Coordinator video. This will enable new coordinators and directors to walk into an academy position and have a very sound basis for their decision making going forward, as POST produces this video to give an overview of the requirements and needs of those positions along with their responsibilities. And then the point just brought up previously, the contract periods and how they affect the timing and the content of our videos. The training video program operates on a 2-year contract with a contracted production company, and our current contract period is ending at the end of June. So all of the programs that were under that contract, all the video programs, have been completed or at least initiated. They were identified no later than late last year, as it's a revolving system in order to start and complete production on each of these. Our next contract is in the works right now, and we hope to have it in place later this summer. And that should provide for at least 16 different types of videos and different lengths of those various videos I mentioned before. Typically, there are 4 training videos, the full length, and then a variety of long, short, and did you know videos as well. We will determine the types and the subjects for those new videos within about 6 to 9 months of the initiation of the contract. So once the contract is in place, we have a list of prior topics that are of concern or maybe of urgency. We review that, and as well as any contemporary issues that are pressing at the time, and determine which of those are amenable to waiting the 9 to 14 months that it takes to complete video production. And then the program development aspect of it, I would like to try and share my screen if I can. Let's see if that works. I just a chart. If this doesn't work, turn me around and I will undo it quickly. One moment, please. Okay, is that enabling you to see the development process.
Yeah, there you go, Mike.
Okay, very good. So this is just meant to provide a view of how our development process works with each of the video programs. Some may be a little shorter based on the type of program. But as you can see, there's 3 phases. The first phase is the topic identification and preparation for the initial workshops. And the various components are listed here. And one of the concerns I know of the committee and the board is how do we identify the constituents, the affected parties, and subject matter experts, and establish the trajectory of the course before it even goes to a meeting. And that is what this first phase is set for. And as Roseanne mentioned, and as mentioned as concern, this is where we can bring on board additional information and viewpoints with the committee and others as well, to be better prepared as we enter into the development phase. So in phase 2, this is where the initial workshop begins. And typically the first workshop will be the development workshop, where we explore the goals and objectives, develop the list and everything related to the production, what it is we want, the goals and everything along those lines. And then also we get into the very specific items of the resource allocation or acquisition, the traits of the individual actors and participants, demographics, the settings where these are going to happen, and the specific needs for those settings are all determined in this first meeting with the subject matter experts in place. The second phase is the actual development continues on with the production workshop, typically the second meeting, where the scripts that were developed initially for the various scenarios are reviewed and finalized on day 1. The production elements are brought in and prepared, and then on set, the subject matter experts provide commentary and corrections as needed when things are said maybe incorrectly or don't pan out quite as anticipated. That is adjusted through our production company by the subject matter experts and post staff. And then the third piece of development with production aspects is the interview and facilitation. Interviews are of subject matter experts who may be on the committee or the workshop team, and often include those who are outside but have very important information to include in the video, and maybe a talking head, for lack of a better term, or provide lines that are spliced into the video at appropriate places. The facilitation term is one that is often misunderstood, and that is where we begin with a trained facilitator who can elicit good, meaningful responses on the subject areas. And we bring in real law enforcement officers who have not seen the videos yet, nor participated in the process. These officers are put in a squad room type scenario, and then the facilitator plays the video and then launches into facilitated open-ended questions. So we get live, true responses from actual law enforcement in that. And it's meant to do a couple things, and that is expose the audience to others' perspectives and broaden maybe their understanding or broaden their beliefs on what may be true about topics, as well as provide newer instructors or facilitators the ability to facilitate their own squad settings or similar situations. And then we also conduct, in addition to that, the individual interviews in that to end up in phase 2. And then lastly is phase 3, where the post-production items occur. We develop the guides internally, while the host of the program is scripted and recorded, along with SME reviews of the content and their recommendations for edits. Finalization of the video product from our vendor, we approve it, and then announce the release and post it on our website. So close that down. Sorry about the pause. So just for a brief example of how this occurred with the recent video that is about to be released, the bias and racial profiling training video. That program began early last year, 2019, included the 3 multi-day group meetings that I mentioned, the scenario filming days and individual interviews and facilitation. Subject matter experts from that topic met on that first meeting and developed the objectives, the contents, the scripts. And they represented various prosecutors that focus on hate crimes. On bias and related factors, religious leaders, Museum of Tolerance, law enforcement, bias and diversity educators, department executives, LGBTQ representatives, line officers of various backgrounds, and as I think most of you know, retired and then RIPA board member Judge Lytle. So in that first meeting, those were the people who established the scripts and the scenarios that would be used in that video. And then others that were invited but were unable to attend because of scheduling, which can often happen. It's a very robust schedule once we start all these video productions. We had the ACLU, Oakland Police Department, and the Anti-Defamation League were invited but unfortunately couldn't attend based on scheduling conflicts. And then lastly, I think, as many of the DOJ members know and some RIPA members know, that we went through the guides for this program and found it very beneficial with the input that you provided. Thank you for that. And as Roseanne mentioned and may follow up with, that we're establishing a more robust process to ensure earlier contact happens and collaboration is expanded with your members on the future projects related to your responsibilities as we develop future training in that video area. So that's my comments, and I'd be happy to answer any questions and or pass it along to Catherine.
Mike, if I could just interject one thing.
Please.
The content that we'd sent out to the board for review, because the video production was already done, but we asked for your input into the guides. We took that to heart. It took myself, Mike, and Ron Crook, our contract manager, probably a good 8 hours, if not more, to review that and integrate that into the guides. And there was probably over, what was it, about 44 data points that you guys brought to our attention that we integrated into our guides. Of course, it's quiet, and then as soon as I talk, the blower comes on. So we thank you for that information. I think it's good information to put in both the student guide and the facilitator guide to make it more robust. And again, those video programs, those aren't the end all. Those really are the beginning of discussion. Those facilitate the beginning of discussion. We leave a lot of that open-ended so that the flow of the discussion can be more robust than narrowing it down. Because as you know, what law enforcement deals with on a daily basis is not just this and that. There's a lot of gray area. Try to leave that latitude open for agencies or presenters to talk about maybe things that are community specific and law enforcement general, so that they have those discussion points. But again, your input into the guides that on the bias and racial profiling video that we just produced is much appreciated. And like Mike was saying, in our future endeavors, our future training video endeavors, we will be reaching out to RIPA board members and other DOJ folks, because we want that robust view. We want those stakeholders' view, because everybody brings a piece of their life experience, a piece of their world to that, and it only makes for a better product. And so, the video program is very intense. It's like Mike says, once we kick it off, it is literally back to back, week to week, of getting together subject matter experts and moving forward with the creation of these videos. So that's one component of the area which the Learning Technology Resources Bureau has responsibilities over. So do you have any questions about the video program?
I just have a question, and this might be what you're referring to as the guides. Is there a train the trainer video or a separate, I guess, how does the trainer who's going to be facilitating the videos, if it's in an in-class setting or other settings, learn what to do? Is it just a generic train the trainer that they have for all of the post facilitations, or is it more specific to the individual videos? And what does that content look like?
So you probably
Sure,
saw
great question. Go ahead.
Go
ahead, Roseanne.
Saw the facilitator guide, and the people that teach it, whether it's racial profiling or hate crimes or any of that, have to go through what we call Regulation 1070. It's a specific course that they have to go through the Museum of Tolerance to teach that. So not just any person or any individual teaches that course. So you don't just pull somebody off of report writing and say, okay, come teach racial profiling and or racial bias and profiling and all of that. There's specific training that these folks go to teach this content. Mike, you can elaborate on that, or for that matter, Rachel. I know
Yeah, sure. I'll step in with the productions themselves actually have kind of two tracks by which they can go. For the individual recipient, that would be the individual or the group setting track. But additionally, the facilitation guide that Roseanne mentioned is used by the person running the program and teaching the program. The facilitation setting that I mentioned, the squad room setting, is an optional piece that the instructor can decide to use or not use. And it is there, one, to stimulate discussion if they use it, where other officers can then make commentary on what these individuals said. Or secondly, to provide a newer instructor an understanding of how the questioning should occur and can occur and what to expect within a squad room setting where these trainings often take place. So as far as aiding the instructor, the facilitation guide, which Roseanne, I think they actually got the participant guide. So the facilitation guide includes common questions and responses that they can expect. So it aids the instructor in asking poignant questions about the topic and drilling down into it with answers they might expect or want to hear. And then also several learning activities that are designed to aid the instructor in drilling down into the topic and eliciting more information from the individual participants. And each of the scenarios usually have 2 or 3 of those. And I know we mentioned that we would be getting you the follow-up material, so we'll be getting you the facilitation guide was one of our conversations in-house. We would ask that you keep that close to the chest because it does contain the assessment answers in that. We just prefer for those not to get outside. But the last context or comment would be related to 1070, the regulation regarding additional training and specialty areas that Roseanne mentioned. This is one, racial profiling is one of those areas where the instructor must go to the racial profiling instructor course beforehand. Other topics, not necessarily, but this is one of those.
Does that answer your question, Melanie? Anyone else before we move over to the self-paced course with Catherine Bacon? Great, thank you. Catherine, you're up.
Great, wonderful. Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone can hear me just fine.
We can.
Okay, great. So today I now want to shift gears to talk about the self-paced courses we develop as well. Post has a learning portal available to all Post agencies. It's available 24/7, and in addition to the self-paced training, we also have other resources available to the field. For this project, our stakeholders and partners include subject matter experts who have been trained as instructors, the 1070 training Mike referred to. We also include RIPA board and RIPA subcommittee members as part of that group. In addition, we worked with Rachel and Mark at the Museum of Tolerance, and we are extending out to now include the community leaders and organizations to help in our next phase of the project, which is the full content development. I want to talk a little bit just about the overview. When we say self-paced, that means that there is no instructor-facilitated session. So what we have to be mindful of and careful to do in the design is include all of that within the course. We start by defining learning objectives and then work on learning activities that engage learners, that bring them into the process, that it's not just an information dump, right? We also have evaluation activities that we have them participate in to ramp up their skills. And they can complete this on their time. If they need to leave, it will pause and hold their place, and they can come back so they don't lose progress. We understand officers often might need to leave, take a call. So that's the design of the course. For this particular course, we did take the mandated topics from PC 135194 and went from there to define the self-paced course learning objectives. And I do want to share this with you if I can. I'm apologize for those who don't have a screen. Let me, there we go. And I was just, are you seeing the screen that says self-paced course learning objectives?
We are, Catherine.
Great. And just above this, let me stop that scroll. So this is prepared for the meeting handout packet, so hopefully you'll have that to refer to. But as a refresher for those who don't know the mandated topics for this update training or the base training, here they are. And then below that are, from this, we got together with subject matter experts, with officers, with supervisors. We worked on creating course learning objectives for the self-paced course that can help us focus our efforts while still including all of the topics. And when we develop the learning activities and evaluation activities, some of these learning objectives may be covered in one activity. For instance, we have, and I'll be demonstrating a couple of these, but we have an activity where the activity is to go into the community and establish relationships and learn about the community. And in that part, we can also bring in the perspectives of local constituency groups. We can bring in histories and the civil rights movement and other aspects to kind of make that a fuller picture instead of just, what to do or how to do it. We're kind of showing them what it looks like. So with that, I'd like to take you into a demonstration. I'm going to stop sharing and move to another screen. They're all the same. Try something else. Pardon me, just give me just a second to. What I'm hoping you're seeing is a main menu. Not sure how to. Roseanne, is it showing main menu or?
It is.
I'm not sure how to show.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
It shows the four areas.
Great, yes. So one thing I want to mention about this demonstration is this course is very much in progress. In April, we had members of the RIPA board, the subcommittee, community members, and Department of Justice staff review what we call the pre-alpha version. It's basically a version that has each type of learning interaction we want to include with placeholder content and with kind of scratch or placeholder media, but it conveys the idea of what we're trying to do in each learning activity. For those of you who saw that version, you would recall that original main menu was basically just a list of activity types. From the feedback and reviews we got out of that process, in addition to the content and recommendations for community members to include in the next phase, we also got some good ideas about how to group the content and provide some advanced organizers, if you will, in a menu format to help them kind of piece through each of these areas. So those of you who saw it before, this will look different to you, but we have since grouped the learning activities into different areas. Now, this is still in progress, but I wanted to give you a demo just to give you an idea. So for instance, this your brain, we're still talking about even the labeling here. So that would be the science, right? And it's going to be your community. So we're fine tuning this as it is, but I thought it would be good to show you just, kind of an idea of what we're doing. So for instance, I would go into your decisions and actions, and here I'm presented with 4 different types of learning interactions. The same would be true in, in the law, we would talk about all the applicable, penal codes and laws, and then we bring it all together with the community. Right here, the working menu shows that we'll have a primer on history and civil rights, and then we move them into what we call Connect with Your Community. Right now, you just see the 2 lessons here, but in the full development, we will have multiple learning activities to kind of give them different scenarios. So that's going to be coming in the next phase. Let's see, and I would, what I'd like to share now is a screen that is your decisions and actions. Is that what's appearing? I'm sorry, I can't see my view.
It is, Catherine.
Great. This is an activity that is set up within that section, your decisions and actions. And this is meant to, if not introduce, reinforce the tenets of procedural justice. This is a topic that is also covered in other training and in more depth, but it has bearing in this topic. So we're bringing in the 4 tenets, which are voice, neutrality, respect, and trustworthiness. We want to give them, if they're not sure, so when we went out, for user testing, we were asking, what is voice? And so we got some various explanations. So we said, let's put the actual, what voice means as per procedural justice here. So they can always, bring this up and look at it. And again, this is placeholder. It will look a lot better when it's finished and we do our media. But in this activity, I'm given some statements or conditions or a scene, and I'm supposed to determine, is that an example of voice? Is it an example of neutrality, respect, or trustworthiness? So for this one, I'm just for the purpose of demonstration, and then you get immediate feedback. It continues. And so again, these are placeholder. What we're going to do in the next phase is we're going to refine this content. We're bringing in members of the community, members of law enforcement. We're going to make these actual, things that have happened. So here is the officer pulls over a transgender person whose driver's license picture, name, and listed gender don't match, and pulls them aside to talk to them privately out of earshot of others in the car. So we're asking, okay, what tenet does that represent? So I could throw it over here, neutrality. I'll get feedback. I think the feedback would be a little more robust there. But then we would, again, give feedback. So again, as we move forward with the content and development, we'll be refining this as well. I have another example I'd want to show you from the course. So in this case, we will be using a panel. As I mentioned, in a self-paced course, there's no instructor, and we really have to put in everything and make sure all the loops are closed, and we can evaluate and provide coaching and as they move through each activity. It's not just in a vacuum. So
Catherine,
what we
found... Catherine,
yes.
If I could interrupt, we can only see the feet.
You can only see the feet. Okay.
At least that's all I see is feet.
Okay.
I can see the whole screen. This is Melanie.
Can you?
So I don't know. Yeah, there might be different in what people can
Oh, there we go. I can see the whole thing.
Got it? Okay. Yeah.
The whole thing.
Okay. We're blazing trails here. So thank you for the feedback. Anyway, so this is something we find useful in self-paced courses, is to introduce coaches or facilitators or others to come in at certain points and provide guidance. In this case, what we're doing is we have a panel who will come in and out throughout all the activities, and they represent the law, the DA, community members, and law enforcement, peers, supervisors, or other. So they'll be coming in at different points to provide additional feedback or coaching opportunities. And it just gives, in a self-paced course, it gives a face to a learner to engage with. In the final version, these are, again, placeholder stock photos. We will be doing a photo shoot and video shoot to make sure everything is customized to the course. For now, this is just to give an idea. And the other example I'd like to show is another activity regarding, this is related to responsibility to report as well as identify. So, and it's within, kind of the focus of, the law. So the lead into this is we provide the details of a scene where it was a traffic stop, and you're going to break down the officer who's talking to his supervisor. You're going to kind of evaluate his account of what happened. This is going to, I will warn you, this is going to look very basic because that's what it is right now. It's just to get the idea across. And again, we are in the next phase going to make this really robust, and we'll have more than one scenario. So I just want to caution you that that's to come. So so he says, and there is audio, you just won't be able to hear it because of the way this is set up. But we'll have an audio, maybe a video of an officer giving his account, and as it plays through, and I'm hearing audio, so sorry. It'll go through, and then at certain points we're going to stop it and say, okay, based on what he's saying or what he did or she, what do you think? Is that okay, or is that not okay or dangerous? Is that not a good thing? And so we'll go through. I'll try to fast forward it. Let me see. Okay, so here comes our DA. She's going to evaluate what we said was right. So this is my response that you're seeing here in green, and imagine she's telling me about that. And then if I go to the next one, okay, there we go, next. She's going to give me her feedback on this. What if I had selected that this was down in the yellow zone, we'd have a little more feedback here saying, well, you said it was yellow, but really, this seems okay. Then when we get down to the next one, she's giving that feedback. So that's an example of kind of bringing them through, having them slow down, take it apart, look at it. It's just somebody else's scenario, and then we can give them that coaching on identification. That I'm going to stop now. Again, I do want to thank everyone who participated in the review of the pre-alpha. Coming up after we get the course content all together without the final media, we're going to bring it out for another review, and for the next month we'll be working on the content, bring it out for another review, and then I will say the pandemic situation has affected our media production, so we will be assessing how best to move forward with that. But yeah, we'll see. We'll just take that as we go. I do want to thank again the group for their very robust and very thoughtful feedback. It gave us so much to work with, and also to thank you all for your contacts in the community that we'll be reaching out to in the future and including. And with that, I will take any questions.
Catherine, this is Sandra Brown.
Hi, Sandra.
Hi. On the self-paced, do we have an estimated time when the self-paced video might go to finalization and ready to be?
Good question. So we had been targeting the end of June, and we were really on that track. Then we kind of got, like anybody else, sidetracked. So right now we're projecting that in July we'll have the full version ready for initial review, and and I'm just going to say that our new projection is August 2020 for full release.
Okay. Also, and this might go to Roseanne, has any of the current issues that are going on today caused us to have a change in mindset on how we're going to introduce some portions of the video? Because I went through the video, we were talking about duty to report, and we usually, throughout my experience, my 30 years in law enforcement, we use fictitious situations. Is there any opportunity that we can use what currently happened when we discuss your duty to report? Because unfortunately somebody died, but this is a perfect example on the law and our duty as individual law enforcement officers to report, because as you see, one officer caused the death and 3 officers stood around and they all got fired. And I think it's important that we somehow put that out in the video, that if you're not part of the solution, you can very well be deemed part of the problem. And I know that on this video we use some fictitious situations, but I mean, my goodness gracious, the timing, unfortunately, the timing is perfect.
Yeah, so that's a good question, Sandra. I've already had discussions with Mike about that. The video that's already done is done and will be pushed forward, but we can carry that into the next cycle. You know, we can create another video into the next cycle. And that, if you guys don't have any other questions of Catherine and Aisha, if I still have time, Sandra, I could touch on our new use of force virtual reality machines that we're getting that would speak to exactly what you're talking about. So I just want to make sure we're good with time.
Yeah, if I could add one more to the self-paced.
What's that, Catherine?
I just wanted to add one more point about, Sandra, your suggestion regarding the self-paced course. That we have, and you saw we have an interaction, I didn't just demonstrate it here, but we have a reaction about reporting. It's a timeline, things happen over this timeline, and we see what happens if you do or don't. Yes. Now, there are certainly things that I would defer to our, my subject matter experts and post, but we do try to make it current. We're using, what's happening on social media. We're using other things. So yes, that is definitely in our minds, but we also need to be sensitive and careful.
Yes.
Okay. So,
well, I just like to say, Catherine's put in a lot of work. I appreciate the work that you're putting in on that. I now know that I wasn't part of the subcommittee for post after hearing what Mike Barnes was speaking about. I just want to say thank you. You guys are working your rear ends off, and I appreciate, and I'm now happy to be on this subcommittee because I think this is very important for training for law enforcement in this state. So thank you for letting me speak.
Great, thank you.
Oh, thank you. Aisha, do I still have time to speak?
Let's see. Let me check in with Allison.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we want to allow time for public comment, but I think if it's just a few minutes, there's enough time to fit it all in for sure.
Okay, so thank you. I'll speak to one other project. Like I said, under the umbrella of my bureau, we also have the force option simulators and the driving simulators. We currently, or this last year, received $5 million from Assembly member Weber's office. And we're utilizing that $5 million to, and this is all coming into the finalization stages now, of purchasing virtual reality force option simulators, which is technologically kicking us up to a higher standard than the old kind of shoot, don't shoot scenarios. These force option simulators will be environment based. And so as you walk into it, you'll have the virtual reality, but it'll be an environment and you can create whatever situation you want. And there'll be dialogue between the student who's going through the scenario. So it could be an active shooter somewhere, and then the instructor who's leading it. And depending upon how the officer responds, the instructor can manipulate the machine to either comply or not comply, to elevate, to de-escalate, and it's really meant for critical decision-making skills. And what we did is we're finishing up the final curriculum for that. That'll be an 8-hour course, fully immersive, and that course will touch on all of the components, all the 14 areas in SB 230. And one of those areas that you're talking about, Sandra, is duty to intercede. And some of the other things, if I could share my screen really quick, let me see. Oh, you know what, I'm not going to do that because it brought up something and I have a feeling I would have gone into vapor lock, so I'm not going to touch that. But anyhow, if you go back and you look at SB 230, if you pull that up and then you look down at subsection 2B and then you see the 14 areas that outline the course and training course, you will be able to see the different areas that each of these topics in this new virtual reality force options course is going to speak to. And I'll just name some of them: the legal standards for use of force, duty to intercede, the use of objectively reasonable force, and so forth. It goes, like I said, talks about implicit, explicit bias and cultural competency, talks about low frequency, high risk situations, shoot, don't shoot, and real-time force option decision making. So we're really excited to roll this new equipment out. It just went to bid. The bid should be awarded hoping sometime this week, if not next week. And once we get the vendor on board, then we can start distributing this equipment and this course across the state of California. And right now, we have 50 entities lined up, both law enforcement and regional training centers. We could probably go up to about 75 with the bid that has come in. So that means we can touch all corners of the state of California, from smaller agencies that can't perhaps send somebody to training because their training budget is not robust, but we could send the equipment to them to use. And so I think this is really going to elevate training to more real-time, deeply immersive, critical decision-making. And I agree with you, the duty to intercede is key, especially on the heels of what we see going on across the nation in some of these incidents. So I think that we're really cutting edge here and moving forward with this transition of technology and the full immersion into it. So that's one way, yet again, another way to bring in that component of duty to intercede in that regard. So I'm to be honest with you, I'm excited. This is going to be some really cutting edge stuff that we're moving forward with. So I'm happy that Shirley Weber's office provided us the money and we're able to move forward with that. So does anybody have any questions on that, or does that kind of answer your question?
This is Melanie. I did have a question, or maybe a possible suggestion to think about in the immersive training, if it's possible to incorporate trainings from the other side or experiences from the other side. So how it feels or how it's experienced by a civilian being approached by an officer. Like, for instance, we have lots of footage of incidents of individuals being, force being used within seconds of arrival, or within seconds of being given a command, being told that they weren't compliant, be given multiple commands from different officers that are possibly conflicting. It'd be amazing, I think, for an officer to experience from the other side, how their actions could be interpreted or received or misinterpreted by an individual, so that they kind of better understand kind of what's going on from all perspectives, so that they can really understand what is happening when they respond, when they are trying to de-escalate, inform them kind of better, not just from a sterile position of, the police are doing everything right, the person is just being non-compliant. I think it would be very, very useful and provide a greater depth to the officer's understanding of what we're trying to do is allow them to really fully understand what's going on in those moments.
Sure. Technologically speaking, I'm not sure how we could do that. I know some of the demos that we've had, again, I don't know how you could, I don't know if you could put the officer in the shoes of the citizen, is what you're asking, you know, like in that regard, in the technology that we have. Moving forward with this, I'm sure that, I look at this as Gen 1, right? 1.0 with this technology, and I'm sure it's going to continue to evolve. So with these different vendors, we could probably request in some of these environments, maybe they can position something like that. I'll take that into consideration. I don't know if this technology has the capacity to put somebody in somebody else's shoes right now, except for in the direction of the facilitated discussion piece. We also have a procedural justice course that goes deep into, or that we're working on and we're pushing into the academies, that really goes deeply into implicit, explicit bias, where that could be vetted out a little more, that could be worked through a little more. So there's so many other courses that are out there that might be suited better for that role-playing interaction. But I will take into consideration what you have, talk to the vendors about it, and see if there's a way to integrate that into technology.
Yeah, I'd be really interested as to why they wouldn't be able to just change the dynamic of, you know, who you are in the role play. If there are other individuals already going to be interacting with, just change who those people are. But I mean, you have a better sense of what the capacities or capabilities are. But I think that would be really useful to have, and I think would be very appreciated by the community, and maybe would give officers a much better and more realistic understanding of what's going on in those interactions, so they can better evaluate why someone is acting in a certain way. Maybe they themselves reacted in that exact same way when they were, you know, asked to drop something when they didn't have anything in their hands. What do you do at that moment? You know, I think it'd be very helpful.
Sure.
Hey, Roseanne.
Yeah, is that you, Mike? Who is that?
It is. I was just going to bring up a conversation Roseanne and I had after some of the comments we received, was that expansion of our idea of who can be involved in our programs or how we can insert them in appropriate places. And the description of the encounters that you're providing within the video training program, outside of what Roseanne's talking about, that is a concept that hasn't necessarily been there, where we actually bring in citizens to have a different perspective or an additional perspective to give some acuity or some diverse perspective within that training that we've already provided. So, for instance, having the family of someone who's been stopped repeatedly talking during a video training segment about the lawfulness of stops and things like that. It brings in that perspective and hopefully emotes some empathy for that as well, and awakens the officer to those other perspectives. So those are other things being considered, and by these encounters that we're having and expanding our resource pool with TOJ and the board are assisting us in finding, hey, there are other ways that we can bring in some of these things and enhance what we're doing now.
And if I could add, this is Catherine from the self-paced side. We do have that in mind for the self-paced course, especially in the Explore Your Community, and bringing community members and individuals in to tell their stories and bring those into, so they can maybe experience or at least hear from folks from real life and how they feel. So this is again good substantive feedback, and we'll take note. Thank you.
Yeah, I think there's avenues we can take and we can explore. So I'm not opposed to doing that, Melanie. I just have to ask questions, right? So anybody have any questions? Because before I close out, I do want to bring our legislative liaison and PIO. I want to introduce her into this conversation because she's going to speak a little bit about the AB 392 data stuff, hopefully answer a couple of questions in the chat if we have time for that.
I did have a few just other kind of general questions. I didn't want to interrupt in the other sections because I didn't know where they fit in.
Sure.
But I did have I don't want to dominate here if other folks have questions as well on the committee.
For me, I think I'm more concerned with how we doing on time. So
okay. Well, I'll just jump in and then and so just get my questions out. Just kind of one was just curious as to So looking at the other post trainings, obviously it's important to have the standalone training on racial bias, trainings on racial bias. But I could see definitely there's ways in which the content that's supposed to be getting across in these is going to be very useful and meaningful in other trainings as well, potentially. So for instance, just looking at the post website, looking at officer safety, hot or not, like how does the officer evaluate what's a risk, what's not a risk, the use of force, the totality of the circumstances, the suspicious activity reports, which we know from looking at reports, and those reports are very racially skewed. So like, is there a way that's anticipated incorporating the concepts that are being brought into the racial bias training into those different trainings as well? Because I think would be hard to necessarily overcome those issues, the failure to take into account those biases in a number of other trainings on how officers are actually using force, how they're actually being taught to de-escalate, and then having one training saying, make sure you do it in a non-biased way, where they're being told that cues for, what is a threat might actually be impacted by like racial bias in evaluating individuals. So I mean, I'm just guys curious as to how that might be incorporated into other places as well.
So any of the things that you're discussing there, a lot of the things that you're talking about are courses that have already been developed and pushed out there. So as we move forward, we have these discussions. We see what's going on in the world, like Sandra was talking about, what's contemporary, what's happening. We can push those forward and then start to create and integrate all of these concepts together. So none of these necessarily are standalone concepts. And we already have, like in the basic training course, we've already gone through a lot of the basic training content that's taught in the academy and starting to fill it in with things that are legislatively mandated, things that are not legislatively mandated, but we're starting to infuse a lot more implicit bias, explicit bias, procedural justice tenets, and those types of things into a myriad of concepts, an umbrella of concepts, rather than siloing them, because they're not siloed events, right? They touch all of these different things. So what you're looking at are courses that have been developed, but we have, between the private presenters and posts, there's thousands of courses that are out there being taught. And so we try to forecast what is occurring. We try to get ahead of it. And we also work within what we know now too, because a video production can take 12 months. Well, you take things that are occurring right now and we put that into a new video. And by the time that production's done, I guarantee you there will be a new event that we wish we would have known happened, that we could put that information in there. So we could only kind of go with the information we have now, the things that we could kind of project based on trends and experience, and incorporate it into the best training we could provide at the time with all of the other factors that kind of hit us from all different angles. So yeah, these aren't just siloed trainings. We work very diligently. There's only 135 people at Post. And we cover the state of California, which has over 96,000 officers and dispatchers and all kinds of training and standards. So we are working very diligently to stay apprised of what's going on and trying to stay contemporary in the information we have, and also leading the training. I mean, Post is the gold standard for law enforcement training. People come to us, to California, to find out what we're doing from other countries. So we take in all our subject matter experts, we take in what the community's saying, all our stakeholders and constituencies, and try to play that into the development of